What's up, guys? Happy Friday. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is the double shot of Steelers. Be joined momentarily by Chris Halleck, our beat writer here at the company. We're going to be talking about the OTAs that occurred this past week. We're going to try to do it in real-world terms. We're not going to do breakdowns of how many passes somebody threw that were complete or incomplete while they were wearing shorts. We're not going to get into it. We're going to try to keep it as real as possible, the actual information that was accumulated. And the best way, I think, to do that is to do it through your eyes. So we're going to have a Let's Hear It episode of Double Shot, meaning what questions that you have about OTAs or about the state of the team at OTAs on the 30th of May. That's the kind of stuff that we're gonna take today. Ideally in a rapid form. It's a word I'm looking for here. I still haven't had the caffeine yet. Rapid fire. That's it. Rapid fire format. The boss just headed across the street to address this caffeine crisis. My own impression at the moment is that the Steelers are at their most incomplete state following any first week of OTAs I've ever covered them. Why? Obvious reasons. On the other hand, I also recall multiple months of May in which there were, a handful to even several clear gaps, openings where there would be an attempt on the team's part to try to pump it up as being, competition, guys going at each other. And that's a good thing. You want multiple guys going at those positions. When in fact, what they really, really, really want is to have somebody who is a hard set at that position because they have legitimately earned it. And that to me is a good thing. That's something that should be a positive for these Steelers. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about it with Chris and with you. This is where you come in. You are our members here of the Double Shot of Steelers show.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
No, you want me to talk? I'm going to talk right now. I'm also really, really red in the face. Today was school picnic day at Kennywood. So I'm like looking extra red today. My hair might look like it's on fire. But yeah, welcome back while DK eats his food. We're going to talk about OTAs. And I wonder how many comments there are going to be about my face. Because I just saw it. Like
Tyler Matakevich, baby.
No, it pops up on the screen and I'm like, my gosh, it looks like I was out in the sun for like 3 days. That's fine.
We've got some. I'm almost done. She brought up like a croissant and enough to get me through the remainder of this program. I think we can pull this off, but we're going to be taking football questions.
Yeah.
Okay, this is about football. So Daniel throwing in that some perennial choker should come to Pittsburgh. That would be a no. So let's start off with Adam, who's got a really good question for us here. I mean, a really good question. What's the split, Chris, between Jaylen Warren and Caleb Johnson going to look like early? Now, if you say early, I really hope you're referring to early in the regular season when the games matter. Okay.
Yeah.
Because the way things get structured, I can't envision any scenario in which you would look at Caleb Johnson in training camp or the preseason and say even if he's brilliant, even if he is, Saquon too, okay, and you say to yourself, that's it, we're making him number one ahead of a guy who's worked for it for years. It's just not going to happen. But early in the regular season, I don't know. What do you got, Chris?
I keep leaning toward the split between the running backs being the same that they were last year, but with Jaylen Warren being in Najee's place, Caleb Johnson being in Jaylen Warren's place, and then Kenneth Gainwell being in Cordarrelle Patterson's place. That's what I kind of keep leaning toward. I don't think Jaylen is going to be a guy who's just going to be taking all the touches. I do think Caleb Johnson and Kenneth Gainwell both will get their fair share of touches, but I think throughout the training camp and preseason that Caleb Johnson's going to show enough that he's going to get some touches, maybe starting right away. Maybe not 10 per game or anything like that, but or like 10 carries per game, maybe 10 total in a game. I don't know, but listen, when Najee Harris goes away, there's a lot of touches to divvy up, and he's going to be getting some. So I do think it's going to be something similar to that.
Yeah, Jay Mood says that Jalen's such a ball of muscle. I'd hate tackling him. Jalen is thick as a brick, man. He is to see him in just a t-shirt and shorts and so forth after games. You can tell that it's just that's what it is. It's power. He's a power back. Now he does not have the frame, meaning the height, the size, whatever that you've had in classic power backs. And he's aware of that. He gets that. He compensates for it with what you're describing here, the ball of muscle, but also a ball of will. He wants to get through you. But my favorite thing about Jalen is he doesn't force that issue. Yeah. If he can get around you, he'll do that too.
That's the one really cool thing from Jaylen Warren is just the contact balance is so good. He just, when he absorbs contact, he doesn't just fall over. He stays on his feet, or he finds a way to keep himself balanced, and he gets extra yards by doing that. Even if he does go to the ground kind of quickly, he has enough contact balance to maybe get an extra yard or so. And Rico kind of says it right here. He has a low sense of gravity. I mean, you could tell like a lot of it's based in his legs, and he keeps his balance very, very well throughout contact, especially in between the tackles.
Our friend Reiner from up north says, are the Steelers going to run more to open the passing game to the tight end? I can tell you that Arthur Smith doesn't really think like that. In other words, he doesn't have a let's do option A so that we can craft option B as a general purpose. In other words, he'll make it play specific.
Yeah.
Does he want to throw to the tight end? Yes. Does he want to run effectively at will, particularly in short yardage situations? Yes. Does he want to do one to achieve the other? Yeah. Like the one thing right now, I can guarantee if he was sitting with us in the moment, the first thing he would drop in is, I want to throw deep too.
Yeah.
Always leaving that out. Why are you always leaving that out? I want to throw deep. He has a history of throwing deep. He threw deep last year. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the way the Steelers necessarily would have wanted to. It was out of necessity. But he wants to do all of those things for the purpose of doing all of those things, if that made sense.
Yeah, I think the better question, and this is brought up here, is the real question is, will they run more effectively? I think that's the more pressing question, because I think in terms of actual carries, I think the Steelers were near the top of the league in terms of actual carries.
Attempts,
I don't know if you can run the ball more than they did. They just need to run the ball better. They need to be more efficient. They have to average more yards per carry. They have to turn 1st and 10 into 2nd and 5 a lot more often. They have to, turn 2nd and 7 into 3rd and 3 a lot more often. That's just what they have to do. And then everything else will open up. Yes, that sometimes that's out of play action. Sometimes that's straight up drop back passing. You're also thinking about quick game passing. There's a lot of ways that Arthur Smith can and wants to attack defenses. It's not just pound pounding the ball on the ground.
Mark Cunningham says, when I first saw Jalen, I said that dude's got a chance, meaning going back to his undrafted free agent rookie season. He reminded me of Austin Eckler from day one. I think of Eckler as being a smaller guy than that.
I don't know.
No? I don't know.
My comp to Jalen Warren during training camp that year was a bowling ball. That was my comp. That's what he looked
in
like.
a good way.
Well, yeah, that's in a very, very good way. That's what he looked like between the tackles. He would just roll through everybody, and as I was like, oh, well, okay, this dude is, yeah.
Eric's sorry. Eric's raising the bar for our football conversation here. Stay away from the rumors and the other crap. If we report it, we report it. Eric says, will Kenny Gainwell be taking over punt returns, freeing Calvin Austin to maybe be WR2? There's a couple layers to that. Gainwell has been a kick returner. I don't know what his history is on punt returns.
I'm not sure. I can't remember his punt return history, but obviously kick returns is a big.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Let me check real quick here. Kenneth Gainwell and punt returns. It's not here are his returning stats.
Now, one thing I do know for sure when it comes to this situation, when it comes to the Calvin Austin part, I think Calvin Austin, they want to keep him in a similar role. They want to keep him in a role.
He hasn't done punt returns. Yeah, I was correct here. Yeah, Gainwell hasn't done punt returns. Go ahead.
I think they need to keep Calvin Austin. They want to keep Calvin Austin in a role in which he's not necessarily, again, I don't want to necessarily put like WR2 on that, because it's not just about being the second guy on the depth chart. It's about being like, what roles can you play? Can you play straight up Z receiver all the time? Well, Calvin Austin, it's a bit of a risk there. Can he play a role in which he's sometimes lined up as the Z on the outside or sometimes in the slot? I do think that's more Calvin Austin's game. He can do both, and he's effective doing both. But if you put him in that Z receiver role, which is the other outside receiver opposite the main guy on the other side, that's asking a lot. That's asking to constantly win in coverage, both against man coverage and zone coverage all the time. Because if you're on the outside, you have to be able to win against the best cornerbacks in the league. And I'm not saying Calvin can't do it. He's very athletic and very fast, and he definitely grew as a route runner over the last couple of years. But could they shoot a little higher? And I do think they're going to try to shoot higher. I don't think this is the way the receiver room is going to look by the time training.
No, and it goes past just, he's tall enough or not tall enough or anything like that.
Yeah.
I can tell you unequivocally that Arthur Smith's designs, his schemes, his ambitions for Cal this year are, say it with me, WR3.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not guesswork on my part. That's something that I've been told by the coordinator. That's WR3 for Cal. So if you're looking at other options at WR2, you're trying to put Ramon Wilson into a role that he's not been in, and we'll see how that goes. I know everybody wants to. I get the sense that everybody wants to have that answer like right now. Let's figure it out. To me, the best answer that you can get from the Steelers on this subject is let's see, because they can, and I believe will, I'm going to continue insisting on this, will go and get themselves somebody to complement DK Metcalf. Now, when you hear that, that doesn't mean it's going to be somebody of Metcalf's capability, certainly. He's not another $150 million lying around. And it's not going to be someone who can do all the insane things that George Pickens could do when he's on.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm starting to see stuff out of Dallas. Oh, they really blew it, because he's going to do stuff when he's motivated that's going to make you go, wow, this is the steal of the century. And people here are going to have that reaction the first time he shows up on highlights, whether it's on social or TV or wherever, and they're going to go, this is the worst. Why? How did this ever happen? Chris Dolnack has what I think is the obvious answer here. This is draft picks for an established WR2. You don't like giving up draft picks. You'd rather have gotten one through free agency. Maybe the order in which all of this occurred could have been better handled. Maybe not also, because Dallas wasn't going to come to you when you wanted with what you wanted. But to do this, it's in your control. Draft picks for an established WR2.
Yeah, I that's what I do think is going to end up happening. From what I've been, I've been trying to poke and prod as much as I can throughout the week. Being on the south side, and I do think that is what ends up happening. I'm not saying that if it was a free agent, if you could have gotten Amari Cooper or Keenan Allen or any of those guys, it probably could have been done by now. Get them in the building before, because those are free agents. You can approach them, offer them whatever money they want. I think they're wanting to shoot for guys who are under contract, who, against, for teams who might have some, crowded receiver rooms. I think you could see possibly something between the Steelers and Packers for one of their guys, possibly between the Steelers and Texans for one of their guys. That's more kind of what you're looking at. Of course, as somebody already brought it up, possibly, Chris Olave. I don't think that's necessarily as real. I know the Saints are going to be in a situation where they're going to be in a complete reset almost.
They really are. And anybody who doubted that, that should have ended the moment you heard any concerns at all about Derek Carr. The Saints just need to say, you know what? This season's not that important. We got to figure out some other stuff.
Because I don't think you need to put all of your eggs in the Tyler Shuck basket. That's not that type of a quarterback. And then their cap situation is atrocious. It's awful. Derek Carr retiring helps a little bit, but man, it's still bad. So they've got to figure that out. So I think I'm not predicting anything. This is not anything like that. So don't take it this way. But to me, what makes sense to me is possibly a trade for Romeo Doubs in Green Bay, maybe Christian Kirk with the Texans. I know they just acquired him, but they have a whole receiver room full, and they just drafted 2 more. I think those 2 teams make a lot of sense to do business with in this particular situation, but we'll see what all teams possibly are willing to listen on trade offers. We'll see.
Yeah, and that's really where you want to look for. It's not so much because they're the weak prey, but it's because they're the ones that are trying to go a certain direction, and you have what it is that they want, and they have what it is that you want. Mm-hmm. The New Orleans Saints aren't great by any stretch of the imagination heading into 2025 if they decided for whatever insane reason to just go all guns blazing. Mm-hmm. But they have real live National Football League talent.
Yep.
Okay. And if they're going to sell, you better keep that ringer on his highest setting. Mm-hmm. Swan says you would think that the Saints would be primed for some of the Steelers draft picks with a rebuilding mindset. That is absolutely accurate. So you'd be looking at the Saints, and Chris already mentioned the Packers. The Packers did something pretty interesting in this draft. They had wide receivers and they said, nah, we want more. Yeah. And they just kept adding them up, and they know the Green Bay management 100% knows that they are not entering the 2025 NFL season with all of those wide receivers.
Yeah, they just added Matthew Golden and Savion Williams in the draft, and even without Christian even without Christian Watson, who I think is supposed to be out for the year, or at least the majority of the year, they still have a crowded room. So Romeo Doubs, I think, could be there for the plucking, possibly. Again, Houston, you look at their entire room. I think what Houston did when they acquired Christian Kirk was just added a guy to the room that they liked, because they knew they could say, hey, instead of to the Jaguars, because the Jaguars are the team that was going to cut him. They were like, hey, instead of cutting him, here's a 7th round pick.
Yeah.
Instead, just give him to us instead of cutting him. So that's what ended up happening. So if you throw a 6th round pick in the direction of the Texans, it's a return on their investment. And it's like flipping a house, in real estate. You never lived in the house. You never played it down for you, but you added an added a higher draft pick in the process. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was a name either.
Reggie says this offense won't go any further than the offensive line will take them. And with that, I interrupt Reggie. Reggie wins the show because that really is it. Yeah. We're going to get into all kinds of sexier subjects all summer long. There's going to be drama this, drama that. There's going to be, Aaron Rodgers is coming. Aaron Rodgers is not coming. There's going to be the WR2 thing. There's going to be TJ's contract. And by the time they line up, against the other Jets for that first game, all that's going to matter is, oh, geez, wow, that block was really missed. Oh, that's right. Reality. or, wow, did you see the push the line got on that drive? What the heck was that?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the script will flip onto its virtual head. It's all going to be about this kind of stuff. Jay Mood says, I love O-line talk. Where is Broad? Where is he right now?
He's
Chris,
in a
give everybody a scouting report who hasn't heard or read the stuff that we've already put out from OTAs this week.
He's in a really, really good mindset, really positive mindset. He was asked about, what he's, he was asked about how his first few days at OTAs were, and he said, I'm happy to be back on the left side. Now, it's not all he said, but he brought that up on his own volition. He didn't, nobody asked like, hey, and plus we're not allowed to ask, hey, we saw you out there at playing left tackle. It has to be, something that you either ask like, hey, where were you playing? And then he says, it wasn't even asked where he was playing. He said it on his own.
Up, yeah.
And then he brought it up on his own again. And then he did it again. And then he did it again. He brought it up like 4 times. He's in a really, really good mindset. The other teammates who have been talking about him, Zach Frazier being one of them, Nick Herbig, who's been going against him and was in the same draft class as him, both also said that he is that he looks more comfortable over there. He looks like he's at home over there. Dwight brings us up too. It says he's 20 pounds lighter. He is. He said he's around 305 right now when his playing weight last year was 325, 330. And his approach to that is I'd rather be lighter now and put the weight on as I need to put weight on, then be heavy, then take it off, then put it back on. And so he just seems like he's in a really good space mentally, but he also seems like he's in a good spot and has a healthy approach to this entire situation.
Well, let's get specific about his being lighter and the impact that it could have. Now, if you're a regular watching this show, you'll know that we have reported several times to you that the internal feeling on Broad is that he'll make an initial first good block. Think of the common criticisms of Chuksa Okorafor, and you'll be on the same avenue, okay? And that is, he has the natural strength, like fell out of the womb strength, to knock anybody back.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe a couple exceptions. There's some guys out there that are real beasts, okay? But he'll get that good, hard first push. What was happening to him was that the second push not only was ineffective, at times it wasn't even there. And was that because he was running out of gas? Was he on the wrong side or whatever? I don't know. Where I'm willing to give Broad the benefit of the doubt, okay, is he did spend the better part of his first 2 seasons in the National Football League on the right side. Okay, let's just call that for what it is. It doesn't even have to come with finger pointing or did he do it well or did he not do it well, or why, if he did it well in his rookie, did he not do it well in his second year? Opponents find stuff out. If Broad is out there at his natural position and he's operating physically in a way that he feels that he can comfortably move and adjust to the second scenario he faces on a sequence, I'm feeling good about him. Mentally, I don't worry. I never worried about this kid that way. Yeah, he had the one goofy episode where he had the 100 holding penalties. That was in Denver.
Yeah.
Okay, where you thought, wow, maybe he's like gone loco or whatever. Other than that day, I don't worry about him mentally or where he is or where his heart is.
Oh no, he definitely has his heart in it for sure. That's never been in question. I think the biggest thing, honestly, is it seems like there were times where he didn't know or got confused on what he was exactly supposed to do. I mean, there was one play in which 2 tackles both pulled in different directions. That never happens. And given the fact that Dan Moore led
to an entire article by Chris, by the way.
Yeah, Dan Moore Dan Moore had his issues. Mental lapses was not one of them.
No. Jessica asks, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish,
I was going to say that was definitely more of a Broad situation. But anyway, I do think that with this entire situation with Broad going into this, he's again, if it's all up here when it comes to the whole left-right thing, and that's all it is for him.
Great.
Yeah, seriously.
Great. Just deal with it. Jessica says, do you see any position with enough depth that we might take advantage of a trade if a draft pick wouldn't be enough for a WR2? You're not going to need to trade off the roster. You're not going to trade off the roster, Jessica. No. That's a sports executive term for it. You're not going to trade a starter or somebody off who would be playing for you. What you're doing in that case a lot of times, and this is one of the reasons we cited the Saints, is that other team doesn't want somebody off your roster. What they want is cap relief. Okay, so if you take WR2 off their hands, but then they also take some starter from you, they're not getting any cap relief.
Yeah.
The cap is a real thing when it comes to considering assets. Cap space comes with value itself.
Mm-hmm.
Robert says, where is he? Robert says, I think the Steelers are going to shock the NFL this year one way or the other. Okay. Not sure what that's going to do for us, but okay.
I think it's possible. I mean, anything can happen either way. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go right. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. Injuries are a big part of that too. Team stays healthy, you're in a much better position to compete. If you're battling with injuries throughout the entire year, it's really hard to win football games if you don't have if you're not at full strength.
Hardcore football talk for hardcore football fans would be the theme of today's program. Big Box Vids is bringing it here. He says, my main concern in 2025 is Patrick Queen. Why would Baltimore spend the draft capital on the Chicago linebacker, referring to Roquan Smith, of course? I love how he's the Chicago linebacker, though. Another Tomlin miss. Listen, I don't believe for a heartbeat that the Steelers weren't aware of or wouldn't have been interested in Roquan. When the Bears idiotically made Roquan available, as only the Bears can, by the way, it's throwing in idiotically with the Bears just feels redundant, right?
Yeah.
When Roquan came available, I was like, anybody who was, seeing, hearing, or reading my content at the time can attest to this. I was ready to throw myself in front of a moving locomotive to bring Roquan Smith to Pittsburgh. Yeah. Well, he went to Baltimore, and you see the impact. So did the Steelers then go to – well, let's start with first what the question is that comes up, because that's the nature of the show today. Why would Baltimore go get Roquan if they were already happy with Queen? This is a common point of conversation in Baltimore, especially after the fact. Mm-hmm. Well, we knew what we were doing. We knew that Queen was just feasting off of being out there with Roquan, and I'm sure it helps having Roquan out there. But at the same time, I don't think going and getting Roquan was some sort of condemnation of Queen.
No, it was not. Now, Queen's game went to another level when Roquan got there, but
sure,
everybody's game is going to go to another level whenever Roquan comes, because Roquan was that good. Now, I do want to say, look at Roquan last year after Queen left. Was he still good? Yes, he was. He was still very good. Was he as good? Was he as effective? I don't think so. I really, really don't. The big thing that everybody needs to understand with Queen is he was learning a brand new defense. And
no one wants to hear this, Chris.
I know they don't want to hear it. But it's the truth. He was learning a brand new defense, and he's the hub of communication for that defense.
No one wants to hear this.
Nobody wants to hear it, but hey, go back and listen to what James Ferrier said about his first year with the Steelers.
Right. And listen at the same time to what everybody said about Ferrier once he figured it out.
Yep.
He would be out there with these legends. He was just surrounded by them. And yet when you would ask the other players or the coaches, who's the guy in this group, everyone up to and including Troy Polamalu himself would say, it's that guy right there. And they'd point to Ferrier. He was the one making the reads. He was the one making the adjustments on the field. He was the one making sure things were in line. He was the one making sure people were accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all. That's what you want. Every once in a while, by the way, over this past season, over the past season, you'll think about certain situations where the Steelers really, really played well against a certain guy, but you won't give credit to Queen for it. Whereas I can tell you from one specific conversation that I had in Landover, Maryland, when I was asked about how and why the defense was as effective as it was against Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. And the response was that Roquan had Daniels figured out. Okay, Roquan, there I go. Yeah. I'm being Baltimore now. That I was wondering why you were looking at me like that. Huh?
Yeah.
That Queen had Daniels smoked out, and that Queen wasn't going to let Daniels run the ball, and that frustrated Daniels. As in Carroll says, Steelers fans have a hard time accepting anything but perfection from players. That's true, but there's also hidden versions of perfection. Okay.
Yeah.
Not one person would say after that game in Landover, that was the one, by the way, that Mike Williams won.
Yeah.
At the end with that touchdown, the terrific pass, by the way, Russell Wilson. I always mention Williams. I don't mention Wilson, and that Wilson's pass was, my God, was that gorgeous.
He had a few really good passes in that game.
Yeah, but that was.
Oh, yeah.
Chris and I are biased on this one because the press box is in that corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we watched that thing from one hand to the other set of hands coming right at us. And it was like we saw it probably about 4 seconds before it occurred, if that makes any sense to anybody. So it looked that much prettier to us. Anyway.
Yeah.
So PQ is out there and he's getting this feel from Daniels. Now, later on, Terry McLaurin had his runs in space. So it's not like Washington was, shut down or something like that.
They were a good football team.
They ended up in the conference championship for a reason. But PQ made a lot of things happen that day, and that's the kind of thing that I'm looking forward to seeing on a regular basis in 2025. And you know who else is looking forward to seeing that happen in 2025?
Patrick Queen.
PQ is. Yes, he is. He is.
Really quick, I did.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say PQ is he's eager to show what he's learned, and he's eager to, the way he put it to me this week, just play football.
Yeah.
Just play football. Just fly to the football. And if he has Cole Holcomb out there in coverage, if he has Peyton Wilson getting some things done with his speed, meaning side-to-side stuff, cutting off the screen passes and so forth, which, by the way, PQ was also very, very good at.
Yes.
And I said that in past tense. He was very, very good at that, as in he was very good for the Steelers already at that.
Yep.
What you're talking about is run defense. What everybody's talking about when they criticize PQ is run defense, because they remember those couple of games where he had a bunch of missed tackles and he beat himself up for it and everything else, right? Okay. You know what's a great way to not worry about your inside linebackers making tackles?
Have the defensive line be better.
What a concept.
Yeah. Have your defensive tackles be able to absorb double teams and actually keep them. Really quick, I did a quick little history lookup on James Ferrier really quick. 2002 was his first year with the Steelers. He had 82 tackles in 16 games. No, 14 games, sorry. That's, pretty good season. Yeah, the next year he had 141. And yeah, I mean, just the production went up across the board for Ferrier in year two. Again, inside linebackers, it is a completely different animal, because you are the quarterback of the defense. You are the hub of communication. You are communicating with the defensive line, with the outside linebackers / edge rushers, with the safeties, with the cornerbacks. You are communicating with everybody. And if you are learning an entire new defense, and yes, the Ravens and Steelers do play defense differently, it's a process that takes a long time to get down. I do think that we are going to get a much different version of Patrick Queen this year, and I think it's going to be for the better because we know what he's capable of, and now he's going to be doing it without having to learn everything on the fly. The only thing he has to get used to is a new linebackers coach in Scott McCurley instead of Aaron Curry.
John Glink says, hey, DK, how many, you say middle linebackers, but really for the Steelers, alignment is inside linebackers. Do you think that they go into the season with, there's usually 4, I believe, but I see 6 names that can either be solid guys or potentially great on special teams. There has to be a dividing line between the guys that you see as working into the rotation regularly, John, and those who are going to be principally special teamers. When I'm looking at the Steelers' regular old alignment, I'm going to give you 4 names, okay? And hear me out on this. It's going to be obviously PQ. It's going to be it's going to be Holcomb. Here I come with the obligatory parentheses, if he's healthy. And he is out there, and he is doing stuff, and he's performing, and he's got no limitations. So, okay, and they let Landon Roberts go. You're going to see Peyton Wilson, and you're going to see Malik Harrison out there. You really will. Harrison is not going to be somebody who is, comes in only when somebody's hurt or whatever. Harrison is going to play. Now, I'm also going to throw in a 5th name here, even though he might not like it. And that's Deshaun Elliott. When you play, where he plays, and certainly where he played in the 2024 season, he's so close to the line of scrimmage, and his assignments are so strikingly similar to what the inside linebackers are doing, whether it happens to be coverage, whether it happens to be fortifying the run defense, that he can be thrown into that as well. Now, where you draw the next line of demarcation are the special teamers among the inside linebackers. And that's where I start with Mark Robinson. Okay, now M-Rob has another level that he can reach. He knows that as a special teamer. He also knows he's a special teamer. He's not one of those that fights it. Okay, a lot like Chris, he's like Dirty Red.
Thanks.
Okay.
There is something with my lighting down here. I promise.
Tyler Matakevich.
Yeah, it's crazy right now.
But it's a good group. It's a deep group. But I'm going to throw in a giant asterisk here, Chris. I'd love your thoughts on this, please. It's going to be only as good as the guys in front of them, not in the cliched sense, but in the literal sense, meaning I don't want them doing a whole lot of run defending.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you want more than anything is you want them to rack up a bunch of tackles because that means that they're free to wrap up those tackles. That's what you want. You want, Patrick Queen having a whole bunch of tackles. You want whoever, the number 2 is. It could be Peyton Wilson. Sometimes could be Cole Holcomb. You want, I'd say between those 2, probably another 100+ tackles between those 2, because that means that the defensive tackles up front are taking on as many blocks as possible, because so many schemes, you have duo, you have inside zone, you have outside zone, wide zone. So many schemes rely on offensive linemen doubling and then one guy peeling off the double and getting to the second level to get to the linebacker. And if those defensive tackles can absorb double teams and say, yeah, you're not going anywhere, because if you let me go, I'm going to wreck the play, then they have to stay on, or they literally physically can't get to the second level. And now the linebackers are free to make plays. So you want to see production from the linebackers. What you don't want to see is a bunch of tackles from your safeties and your cornerbacks and those guys having to make a bunch of tackles. That's what you don't want to see, because that means that those running backs are starting to get into the second level and possibly even into the third level.
Going to take a couple more today. Remember, nothing but hardcore football talk today. No nonsense, no frivolity, no drama, no radio crap, basically.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. That Chev says, do the Steelers normally keep a backup kicker? Is Ben Sauls expected to make the team? Anybody who doesn't know, Ben Sauls was the excellent kicker at the University of Pittsburgh, also known as Pitt, that is in the fold with the Steelers. The Steelers, of course, a lot like, Kenny Pickett and so forth. There's a little bit of an extra awareness and knowledge of him working out of the same building, even though the building has a 100% division through the middle. There's knowledge. Okay. Yeah. Sauls is not going to beat out Chris Boswell. Here's your big news flash for the day on our show. However, having him in the fold guards against unfortunate things, and every team has 2 kickers in. This team also happens to have 2 punters in, and they're 2 very, very good punters, as Chris and I were marveling the other day and watching them boom the ball, taking turns booming the ball into the clouds between Cameron Johnston and Corliss Waitman. It's funny. I said something to Cam Johnston. I said, as painful as all of that had to be for you last year, what was it like having somebody come in and he goes, oh, he killed, before I even finished, oh, he killed it, meaning Corliss.
Yeah.
And he really did, Chris. This was the most underappreciated spot on the 53-man roster last season. He had 1 lousy kick the entire year, 1 shank, and it was in that heavy snow in Cleveland, which doesn't even count.
Yeah.
Had a absolutely wonderful year. Now, to attempt to answer the question that was asked here, this is the nature of kickers and punters. They have to be somewhere so that they are showing what they can do, not just in their backyard.
Yep.
If they are somewhere in a football setting and they're doing it under supervision and they now have something that they can show to other teams, they will find employment. Ben Sauls is going to kick in the National Football League. You don't kick like that in college and not kick like that way in the NFL. Okay. Corliss Waitman is going to be somebody's day 1 punter in the NFL. Day 1. Mark my words on that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the question is, during the season, no, the Steelers do not keep a backup kicker. That really would be a waste of a 53-man spot. And they don't keep a backup punter either. So by the time the 53-man roster is set, it will be Chris Boswell and Cam Johnston on that roster, barring any injuries, obviously. But during training camp in the preseason, they keep 2. So you will see Ben Sauls kick in training camp and preseason. You will see Corliss Waitman punting in preseason and in training camp. But they will be auditioning pretty much for anybody else who ends up needing a punter or needing a kicker. And that's what that's there for. That's what they'll show during preseason, and they will get jobs. They just will. But yeah, you always want to keep an extra one during training camp and preseason, just in case. You never know. One of your guys goes down with an injury, you're pretty good. If God forbid for the Steelers, if Chris Boswell were to go down with an injury, hey, you got yourselves a pretty good kicker out of college who can step in and put the ball through the uprights. So. And it ended up working out last year that the Steelers were able to get Corliss Waitman because Cam Johnston goes down week 1, and they needed a guy to step up, and man, Waitman did.
Our last question for today goes to Sticky B, who says, "Hey fellas, where have you been, Sticky B? Wait a second, you don't just pop in here like that after forever and go, hey everybody, I'm here. Where have you been? This was a regular." And now Sticky B heard there was cake, and he shows up at the door. Hey, fellas, what's a reasonable step Arthur Smith takes this year for the offense? Can we expect considerable improvement from last year in year 2? What's a specific step? Chris, I'll throw this to you first. I have some thoughts on this as well that Arthur wants to take this year for the offense.
Well, obviously,
not just to get better.
Yeah, sheer production, like more points per game, more yards per game. That is an obvious thing. But the one thing that I'm going to say, especially since I went through and really looked at all the information up, is that you are going to see more of an offense that Arthur Smith really, really wants to run this year. He's going to
tell him what that means. Tell him what that means specifically.
I know. So he's going to have running backs who can run the wide zone, outside zone concepts he likes that are the backbone of the running game. Every offensive coordinator has a basic set of rushing concepts. And in the Kyle Shanahan offense that Arthur Smith learned from under Matt LaFleur in Tennessee, it is based around outside zone, wide zone. Well, in Jalen Warren, Caleb Johnson, and Kenneth Gainwell, you have 3 guys who can all run that stuff. So you're going to have that. Then at quarterback, specifically out of play action. When you talk about, okay, if the running game works, now we can use play action to attack the defense. Well, Arthur Smith likes to attack over the middle of the field out of play action. Couldn't do that last year because you didn't have quarterbacks who could do that or who wanted to do that. Whether it's Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers, both of those guys can do it. Mason Rudolph has already proven he can. And for those of you who don't know about Aaron Rodgers, he played for 4 years under Matt LaFleur, who Arthur Smith learned from. So Shanahan play action concepts are not foreign territory to Aaron Rodgers whatsoever. He even won an MVP playing under LaFleur. So doesn't matter who the quarterback is, it's going to be familiar and it's going to be something that Arthur wants to do. The running backs, it's going to be something he wants to do. So it's going to be more of an Arthur Smith type offense this year. Whether it works or not, that's a completely different story, but it's going to be the way he wants to do it. Sorry.
Now, from a goal standpoint, to take your same question and apply a different answer to it, from a goal standpoint, what he really wants to start doing is winning more on first down. Because if you look at the Steelers' metrics, like from the 32,000 foot view on this, you will see that their issue wasn't so much that they were not successful at 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2. It's that they were constantly in it. Okay. Whereas if your first downs are now 5, 6, even 7 yards, that gives you the best opportunity to build up a real rhythm as an offense. We have not seen, with the exception of 3 games at the end of the 2023 season, the regular season, and then to an extent in the playoff game in Buffalo with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, real rhythm from this offense up to and including even Ben's final year. That was not a rhythmic offense at all.
No.
All that would happen was they would survive for 3 quarters and then Ben would pull it out in the 4th. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay. That was not a rhythmic offense at all. So it's been a long time since we've seen that in Pittsburgh. The best way to get that, the best way to have that happen, and here comes the boring part of the answer, is to have your offensive line block for one of your 2 wonderful running backs and get yourself a nice, boom type of 5-yarder to get started there. Okay. And then now you've got a nice, easy little first down pass you can try, or you can try to keep them off balance and hit the tight end or hand off again when they're not expecting it. But you can do this in a way that you build up the running. Chloe Smith comes in and says, right. And I don't even know if that's a relative of Arthur Smith. I'm joking, Chloe. But that's what I'm getting at here. Chris is right about the technical component, and I believe that what I'm saying here is right as far as the rhythmic component. That's the Arthur Smith dream. From there come points.
Yeah, and you will hear constantly, whenever, and even over the last few years, you've heard players, when they are asked questions about, what does the offense need to do in order to be, more successful, sustain drives. You'll hear a lot of the times, well, we got to stay on schedule. We got to stay on schedule. Well, what DK is describing is staying on schedule.
Yes.
It's turning 1st and 10 into 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 5. It's turning 2nd and 5 and 2nd and 6 into 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, really manageable downs. It's not having 1st and 10 turn into 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 11. And you're constantly having to play where you're in situations where you then limit the playbook, because when you go from 1st and 10 into 2nd and 13, you already cut the playbook. Yeah. 2nd and short's a play caller's best friend. Yeah, of course it is. Because when you have 2nd and long, if you look at the breakdown of a play sheet that an offensive coordinator has every single week, which is, by the way, is tailored to the opponent you are playing each and every week. The offensive coordinator, however, whether he does it himself or he has somebody delegate it for him, the entire play call sheet is rearranged and redone every single week because of how they're going to attack the team that week. And so as soon as you get into 2nd and long, you have to go to a very, very small portion of the play call sheet in order to deal with 2nd and 13 or 2nd and 15 and stuff like that. Like you want to stay on schedule. You never want to get behind the chains, but you also don't want to have to be playing from 2nd and 8 and 2nd and 9 all the time.
Chris is going to hang with us here as we sign off and right after a break here. If you hang with us on the video only portion, we're going to take care of a little bit of business, the Double Shot of Steelers program. We're going to get to our, whoa, there it is. Look at that. Memberships are 2,044 as we work our way toward the goal of 3,000, ideally, before we get to beginning of Latrobe. I'm going to put this question up for Chris to consider, kind of like Final Jeopardy, where they leave it on the board for a little while.
Yeah.
While I go through some of the rest of these and thank some people here, Fishing for Trout came in with 5 gifts. Antonio came in with 5. Again, Antonio, by the way, has been with us for 25 months.
Woo!
As has Fishing for Trout. These guys are long timers. Gregory loves the blueprint that we're putting forth here, especially when we're talking about the running first, setting up the rhythm that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Gregory's referring to the defense. When we were talking earlier about the D line, making sure that look at the Eagles' defensive line. Oh man, all we're doing is looking at the Eagles anymore. It feels like, doesn't it?
I mean, they've done such a great job of putting together things, and it's phenomenal.
Leroy with 5 gifts. John Wachewski coming in with 5, and he does that just because I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm positive of this. Our friend Carol, Mason Rudolph's biggest fan. Contrary to common perception that it's me, it's actually Carol. Carol comes in with 20 gifts. Much appreciated. Carrie's always good for one. Josh Fountain comes in as a new member. Welcome. Eric in California dropped a 5 gift on us there early on. And now we're going to swing this back now that Chris has had some time to Who do you think out of the current rookie class has the best chance to start and be impactful from week 1? Ooh, is this a little too easy, Chris?
It's Caleb Johnson.
It is Caleb Johnson.
I mean, he's going to get touches pretty early on. Like I said, even if Jaylen Warren is the number 1 guy, Caleb Johnson is going to get touches. With the ball in his hand, that's the immediate way to make an impact. If I'm not saying Derek Harmon won't be playing, he will, but he's got a guy in front of him, in Keanu Benton, and so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, obviously, when the Steelers are in their base 3-4, I would expect to see Harmon on the field. When Keanu would then slide to the nose tackle position, and then Harmon could be the defensive end on the other side of or opposite Cam Hayward. But just in terms of Caleb Johnson's going to have more opportunities, and so it's going to be definitely more visible. So I would say right away, Caleb Johnson's pretty much the guy who can make an impact the fastest in terms of long term. Could be Derek Harmon.
Could be Derek Harmon is exactly correct. If Derek Harmon ends up being Stephon Tuitt part 2, it will be.
Oh my gosh,
Derek Harmon, just to say the least here. Not to lay that on him, but Mark Cunningham says, I have to curb my enthusiasm regarding Caleb Johnson. He really looks the part, and those college highlights, wow. To which I say, bum, bum, bum.
Oh, good old Curb, man.
Randy gets the last word today. We love Randy Wagner. Such a great friend to the show for a long time. In on every show. Says, DK, how about some advice? How do I explain to my wife? Hold the phone calls until after the Double Shot show. How does Randy explain that to his wife? How does he do that? I asked. She says to Randy, "You are making a big mistake." That's what you get here, pal.
Yeah. Somebody asked on the in the chat a couple of days ago, "Who's the boss in Chris's house?" It's not me.
No,
it's not me.
No, I could definitely see that. I want to thank Matthew McKinney as well for coming in late, dropping in the 5 gifts. And Benjamin comes in as a new member here at the end. Spirit Digliozzi. How did I do on that one? I take a lot of pride in at least coming close or making an attempt because people butchered my name. You can imagine.
Oh, like mine
homeroom,
too.
Every new grade.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, yours was like how?
Probably.
Huh?
Oh no, I get a whole bunch.
It's not pizza, it's pizza.
Oh wait, she said I got it wrong. The Z's would be what? Like t. Mm-hmm. So it'd be Spiri Digliozzi. Spiri Digliozzi. I even threw the Italian hand up in the air.
Yeah, throw the hand up.
Spiri Digliozzi. Come on, Ben. You got to come back at us here.
No, he did.
Oh,
he did.
Ben,
He's right there.
Ben's got it. Ben, Woo! And on
There
that
you
note,
go.
everybody, listen, have a terrific weekend. Chris and I will be back on Monday with another program, and the Steelers, way more important, will be back with another full week of OTAs and access and stories and videos and everything else that we have for you here. Football stuff for people who know their football. That's here. We'll see you guys next week.